Good morning, this is Pastor Brian. Thank you for joining me today as we read a chapter a day from Hebrews. Today, chapter 4. I'll be reading from the Common English Bible, and it sounds like I may have accidentally not done that for the last couple of days and accidentally been reading from the NRSV, and I apologize for that, but sometimes I've got multiple translations open at the same time, and must have gotten confused. So thank you for pointing that out. Today we will be reading from the Common English Bible. And let's jump into chapter 4. Therefore, since the promise that we can enter into rest is still open, let's be careful so that none of you will appear to miss it. We also had the good news preached to us just as the Israelites did. However, the message they heard didn't help them because they weren't united in faith with the ones who listened to it. We who have faith are entering the rest. As God said, "And because of my anger I swore, they will never enter into my rest." And yet God's works were completed at the foundation of the world. Then somewhere he said this about the seventh day of creation. God rested on the seventh day from all his works. But again in the passage above, God said, "They will never enter my rest." Therefore, it's left open for some to enter it, and the ones who had the good news preached to them before didn't enter because of disobedience. Just as it says in the passage above, God designates a certain day as today, when he says, through David, much later, "Today, if you hear his voice, don't have stubborn hearts." If Joshua gave the Israelites rest, God wouldn't have spoken about another day later on. So you see that a Sabbath rest is left open for God's people. The one who entered God's rest also rested from his works, just as God rested from his own. Therefore, let's make every effort to enter the rest, so that no one will fall by following the same example of disobedience. Because God's word is living, active, and sharper than any two-edged sword. It penetrates to the point that it separates the soul from the spirit and the joints from the marrow. It's able to judge the heart's thoughts and intentions. No creature is hidden from it, but rather everything is naked and exposed to the eyes of the one whom we have to give an answer. Also, let's hold on to the confession, since we have a great high priest who passed through the heavens, who is Jesus, God's Son. Because we don't have a high priest who can't sympathize with our weaknesses, but instead one who is tempted in every way that we are, except without sin. Finally, let's draw near to the throne of favor with confidence, so that we can receive mercy and find grace when we need help. That's the end of chapter 4. So what did you hear? What kind of stuck out to you in the passage today? What made you kind of wonder or made you dig a little deeper? As we see in the chapter, obviously the first majority of it is talking about rest and the need for rest, and the simple fact that after God created on the seventh day, God's own self rested from the creation. So rest is a very important part, and rest isn't like the kind of rest that we think about with, oh, hey, maybe I'll take a nap and I'll feel rested. But rest is this kind of time apart, intentionally set apart. And for us, it is time to be with God. So where do you find your Sabbath rest, as we talk about? Where do you find the times in your life where you designate that day, that today, as a day to rest? And then finally, I just want to briefly point out just this beautiful passage towards the end of Jesus, who went through all of these things for our sake, and yet he was one without sin. He was tempted in every way, verse 15 tells us, and he can sympathize with us because of that temptation, Basically, Jesus went through everything that we probably will ever go through in this life, and yet was able to do it without ever having to go through sin. And so, because of all that, not to make us feel less worthy, but to know that we can approach God with confidence, verse 16 says, and receive mercy and grace when we need it, which, if you're anything like me, can sometimes be all the time. So, those are the things that I really wanted to point out to you today. Again, what stuck out to you? What were the things that really made you think? Write it down, share it with a friend, share it with us. We love hearing from you. And remember, stay safe, take care of yourselves. God bless, and I hope you can join us tomorrow.